Your environment is lying to you. It tells you everything is fine, that your pace is okay, that you've earned a break, that mediocrity is normal, even respectable. It whispers in your ear, not with malice, but with comfort, with familiarity. It says, stay here. You're doing better than most. And it rewards you with little distractions and small validations, enough to numb the ache of who you were meant to become. But here's the problem. Most people are not growing. They're just aging. Your environment becomes your thermostat. If it's filled with people who quit, complain, coast through life, and settle, you will unconsciously set your ambition to match theirs. Not because you're weak, but because that's how human nature works. We calibrate ourselves to the room we're in. That's why it's dangerous, because you may be working hard, you may be showing up, but if you're doing all of that in the wrong ecosystem, the ceiling will always be low. You'll never feel the pressure to rise, only the pull to stay the same. And if you're not aware, you'll confuse movement with progress, and progress with purpose. We must stop measuring ourselves against broken rulers. You look around and think you're doing okay, but okay by what standard? Better than the guy next to you? Or better than the person you were designed to be? That's the standard that matters. You weren't meant to coast through life comparing your effort to people who quit on themselves years ago. You were meant to grow, to stretch, to confront your weakness with courage and intention. You were meant to rise, not blend in. But your environment will lie to you. It will hand you excuses dressed as encouragement. It will reward comfort, not growth. It will sell you mediocrity wrapped in community. That's why some people never change. They're applauded for staying the same. But let me tell you something timeless. Your life will not change until your standards do. And your standards will not change until your environment forces them to. Growth doesn't happen by chance. It happens by pressure, real pressure, the kind that makes you uncomfortable, the kind that calls out your excuses, the kind that makes you aware of how much you've been leaving on the table. Comfort is a silent killer. It doesn't show up as pain. It shows up as a slow leak. A little compromise here, a small delay there, a good enough effort, an almost commitment, a someday mentality. But someday is not a day on the calendar. Someday is code for never. And if you're surrounded by people who treat life like a dress rehearsal, you will too. You have to get around people who remind you of who you can become, not just who you are. People who challenge your standards, people who don't clap for mediocrity, people who aren't impressed by busy, but by growth. People who don't care how hard you worked, but how much you grew. You need people who tell the truth, even when it stings. Especially when it stings. That's the only way to break the spell. Because the longer you live under the influence of a weak environment, the more you normalize it. You start adapting to dysfunction. You begin to make peace with delay. You start calling fear wisdom. And you build a life based on survival, not purpose. But you weren't made to survive this life. You were made to master it. And that begins with asking a hard question. Who am I becoming by staying in this environment? Because environments shape identity. Slowly, quietly, but completely. Look at the forest. A redwood tree planted in a small pot will never grow to its potential. Not because it's not a redwood, but because its roots can't stretch. Its branches can't breathe. The container becomes its limit. You were not designed for a container. But if your conversations are small, if your routines are lazy, if your influences are soft, don't be surprised when your identity shrinks to match them. You've got to fight for a bigger environment. Now, that doesn't mean you need better people. It means you need braver decisions. Because a bigger environment is created by you, by the books you read, the disciplines you adopt, the questions you ask, the standards you raise, the things you stop tolerating. You don't escape mediocrity by moving cities. You escape it by confronting your mindset. If you want a stronger life, don't just upgrade your goals, upgrade your expectations. Don't just dream bigger, live bigger. Walk different, show up different. Hold yourself to a higher code even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. Because that's where real character is built. Not in public, not under the spotlight, but in the dark, quiet moments when you choose discipline over dopamine, purpose over popularity, vision over validation. That's how you build a life worth living. Success isn't something you chase, It's something you attract by becoming a different person. But you can't become that person if your environment keeps rewarding the old one. Some people stay stuck for decades, not because they're lazy, but because they're praised for staying the same. Their habits never get challenged, their beliefs never get confronted, their circle never calls them higher. And so they stop evolving. But evolution is the requirement of a meaningful life. It is not a luxury, it is the contract of being alive. Grow or regress, lead or follow, create or consume, stretch or shrink. There is no neutral ground. And here's the thing about growth, it's lonely, because most people are afraid of it. They say they want to change, but what they really want is to feel better, not get better. They want transformation without tension, results without responsibility. But growth will demand everything you've been avoiding. It will demand you get uncomfortable, that you say no to things you used to say yes to, that you walk away from circles that keep you small, that you abandon the version of you that keeps playing it safe. It will demand sacrifice, not because the world is cruel, but because greatness costs something. And the price is not in money. It's in standards, in habits, in discipline, in choosing long-term reward over short-term comfort, over and over again until the person you were is unrecognizable. You are not a product of your environment. You are a product of your philosophy. But if your philosophy was built inside of a weak environment, you have to be willing to tear it down and rebuild it, brick by brick. New beliefs, new standards, new definitions of success, new values, new rituals, new language. Because the words you use shape the world you live in. Do you say, I hope or I will? Do you say, maybe someday, or today is the day? Do you say, it's not my fault, or it's fully my responsibility? That one shift can change the entire trajectory of your life. Because responsibility is not blame, it's power. It says, I am the author now. I write the next chapter. I decide who I become next. And once you take that kind of ownership, your environment starts to lose its grip. Its lies begin to fade. You no longer need its approval. You're no longer seduced by its comfort, because now you're driven by who you must become, not who they expect you to stay. Let this be the season you stop shrinking for your surroundings. Let this be the year you rise above the noise and create a life of signal, a life of substance, a life that echoes because it was built, not borrowed. You don't have to keep circling the same mountain. You don't have to keep tolerating the same conversations, the same delays, the same inner narrative that says someday. Someday must become now, because time is not waiting for your environment to change. It's waiting for you to change. And if you can have the courage to take one honest look at your life, to ask what needs to be burned, what needs to be built, what needs to be walked away from, then everything begins to shift. Not because the world got easier, but because you got stronger. That's the secret. You don't get what you want, you get what you become. And your environment, it's just a mirror. Change the person in the mirror, and the world reflects it back.